We just have the indictment being handed to us. Let's bring in Scott MacFarlane. Scott.
I'm joined here by Graham Cates, who is in the courtroom. I was in the overflow courtroom. You mentioned that Donald Trump spoke 6 times. What were the other 5 things he said besides not guilty?
That's correct. The judge ran through with him some of his rights. He has a right to a different attorney if he wants to. He also can waive his ability to appear at different hearings, either voluntarily, depending on some factors, or if the judge is unhappy with his behavior, essentially. And each time the judge gave one of these instructions, he asked former President Trump, "Do you understand?" And Trump said, "Yes," or "I do," "yes," or "I do." And this happened 5 times. And then the other time he spoke was when he said, "Not guilty."
What's important to underscore here is that there was no gag order issued in this case. There were a lot of pieces of speculation that they may order the parties to be gagged on this because there's been such fiery rhetoric coming from the former president. No reference to a gag order, no proposed gag order?
That's correct. What they're working out right now, though, is a deal about discovery where they're going to limit how much he and the defense team and the district attorney can talk about the things that are produced by the prosecutors to the defense team. There was some discussion of maybe only meeting in one room with the defense team and him not being allowed to take materials out of that room and him being barred from sharing it with anyone, including the press.
What the court clerk said as she read this charge was 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. Later in the proceedings, there was also a reference from the state, from the district attorney, to a scheme.
That's right. They said that their investigation dates back to materials that go as far back as 2015, where they described former President Trump and a former lawyer who we know to be Michael Cohen discussing the ability to pay off people so that material that might hurt his presidential campaign wouldn't make it into the fold.
I would say this, Nora. This is such a humble building compared to the other courthouses across America, the federal courthouses, the Supreme Court. Kind of small, a little stuffy, a bit of a dank room. I noticed the former president smiled slightly when the press photographers were in the room for a few moments. Otherwise, kind of hunched over in his chair, somewhat expressionless, nothing in his hands, no pen, no paper, no note-taking. And it was his defense attorney, Tom Blanche, the newly hired defense attorney, who spoke for him.
That's correct. Todd Blanche. So he was very serious. Donald Trump was very serious. He didn't make a lot of gestures. He whispered with his attorneys a little bit. But Blanche kind of said, we need to see this indictment. Now that it's finally unsealed, we need to study it and then figure out what our next steps are. Nora.
Graham, I'm just looking at a press release from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office that is a statement of fact that the defendant, Donald J. Trump, repeatedly and fraudulently falsified New York business records to conceal criminal conduct that hid damaging information from the voting public during the 2016 presidential election. I want to walk through this with you. They first note that in one instance, American Media, Inc., AMI, which is the holding company for the National Enquirer, paid $30,000 to a former Trump Tower doorman who claimed to have a story about a child Trump had out of wedlock. How does that factor into this?
You know, in court, they didn't describe one by one what the different allegations were, other than to lay out this timeline that I think went back further than we expected. And that's actually the first time hearing about it. So I think we're going to see that there are other materials. We've known so much that has come from people like Michael Cohen and others who are kind of in this orbit. But now with these investigators who have been looking into this since actually about 2018 are finally revealing to us what they've learned in all that time.
And Graham, correct, there was no gag order issued by the judge, but there was a warning about social media posts.
That's correct. You know, he asked both the defense attorneys and the prosecutors to talk to the defendant, former President Donald Trump, and their witnesses about making any comments that he said could incite violence or unrest. I mean, he gave a few different instructions along those lines, saying you should really tell your client not to make social media posts that might incite violence, not to say things that might incite violence. And this was after the prosecutors handed him a list of social media posts, they said, that they believed made this area around the courthouse one that needed even more securing than it would have been normally if a former former president was coming around.
What's more, this is the first, but it also might be the last proceeding in which the media is blocked. The permission to use cameras, the permission to use laptops or phones inside the courtroom. The judge said he'd consider opening it up for future proceedings. So this might be a one-of-a-kind moment where everything's happening behind closed doors and a closed curtain.
Graham, I want to also continue to read from this press release from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office about this concealing criminal conduct from the public during the 26th presidential election. The first instance that I mentioned, according to this press release, that AMI paid $30,000 to a former Trump Tower doorman who said they had information about a child that Trump had out of wedlock. In a second instance, according to the press release, AMI paid $150,000 to a woman who alleged she had a sexual relationship with Trump. And when Trump explicitly directed a lawyer who then worked for the Trump organization to reimburse AMI in cash, the special counsel indicated to Trump that the payment should be made via a shell company and not by cash. What does this tell us in terms of what you heard in that courtroom?
That was really important. You know, it's not about the payments themselves. It's about the falsification of business records. So the attempt to cover up, allegedly, who the payment came from and who the payment was to. And again, they stress that this was, according to them, done so that it would make his campaign one that where this wasn't causing stumbles and it wasn't becoming a bigger issue for him, all of these different instances.